Samples is the most important part of the business. As more samples you send, as better chances to get more orders. It's as simple as that. Samples brings orders, period.
Happy to introduce Talor Ofer from Retail Empire. Hi, Talor. How are you today?
Very good. Thanks for having me today, Eitan. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes, it's a very exciting topic. Talor, going to talk about retail in the US. Let's start but quick, overview about you and what you do at Retail Empire.
Sure. So basically, I've been doing retail for the last 25 years. When we say retail, we mean selling products to chain stores, physical stores, brick and mortar. That's what we call it. My focus is in the US market alone. And I've been doing this, as mentioned earlier, for more than 2 decades. In the last couple of years, we have a rep agency where we introduce vendors to retail buyers. That's basically what we do.
Yes, and again, it's very, very important channel, right? I mean, a lot of brands are going D2C, but D2C is so difficult today across every channel. And for me, I mean, I truly believe in this B2B approach. It's something that should be considered by any founders out there. So what makes brands truly ready for big box retail beyond having a great product?
So I think the first and most major thing in being ready for retail is actually having, all the supply chain, which is something that most of the e-commerce, Amazon / Walmart, Shopify sellers do have already. But for some reason, a lot of vendors are not really aware to the fact that they have most of what they need in terms of going into retail, into being on shelf with their products. But that's the most basic thing. Apart from that, or on top of that, I should say, there's also a couple of small things that you need to have, which is retail packaging. First and most, because eventually your product is not being sold on a paper like a page or URL, but rather on a shelf. So someone is passing by your product, and if they look at the packaging, they need to understand in seconds what they're looking at. And once they do, then there's attention to your products. Second thing I would say is what we call language, like the retail language. It's not a big deal. You can learn it. You can dive into it. You can even swim in the water without even know how to swim at the first steps. But eventually there is a language. And the same way that you know all the terms in Amazon, this language is something that you learn on the go, as far as, I'm seeing in our business.
And it's great. And looking into this new year, 2026, when do you suggest founders consider going retail? I mean, is this something that need to consider like at the get-go of launching their brand or at a later stage?
So I think something that I'm generally saying every year, and then I'll say something specifically for 26. So every year I'm telling vendors all the time, across all channels that I have with my audience, that, we already have at least 90% from what you need for kicking off in retail. And there's no reason really why not to jump in and start selling, wholesale bulk big orders. But then, because eventually the entire online in the US is 15%, 15, that's right. And then, missing the other huge part of the cake is not a good idea. But then specifically for 2026, I think what I'm seeing is a couple of things. I'll touch the major point of them. And I'm seeing that decisions are being taken very, very fast. And we have not seen that before. Usually, typically, a buyer would take their time, and they would take, a couple of weeks until they really see the samples and know exactly what they're going to, and if this is like a good fit for the stores. But now it's happening far more fast, and that's, I believe, because a couple of different things that is happening in the market. The first, most, I think, bolded thing is that Trump taxes, Trump tariff, what was implemented last year, got to the market, and then a lot of buyers, a lot of retailers understood that they have to act very fast. For those who acted fast before the tariff were really implemented into law, they took, the inventory they should have, and then they sold it with the old price, but getting, the same retail price, rather than buying it in the new price, which is reflecting extra percentage of tax, depends on the product, of course, and the code and everything, HTS. But then that's thing that made, I think, retail move much more fast than it used to move in previous years. So this is something that we definitely see in 2026.
Which is a good thing, right? I mean, if you're gonna get a quick feedback, right, about your product, I think it's great, and it's also worth mentioning that the majority of U.S. commerce in general is still offline, right? I think it's more than 70%. Although e-commerce is growing much faster than offline, let's say brick and mortar, and half of the online business is Amazon, right? So there a lot of founders are just going D2C and fighting all this smaller share when you have this huge opportunity. Also, although probably requiring more robust kind of structure and matureness in the company, right, to operate. But definitely, this is something that they need to take into consideration. So, Talo, from your experience, what are the most common reasons retailers reject brands? Usually.
I think a brand that is transmitting the feeling that they are just buying and selling rather than creating a real brand with a solid story behind it and cool branding and some social media traffic. That's one point that can make them fail. That's because the buyers are eventually looking at the brand thinking, okay, the first and major point is to have them on shelf or not. But then this is something that most of the people are not aware of, even from my industry, that buyers are walking on bonuses. That means that around December, end of the year, which just happened a couple of days ago, uh, the buyers would get or not a huge bonus, and the bonus is depending on the success of the success of the products that they brought in. So if they bring successful products and they sold, that's where they're going to see fat and big bonus, and if not, they're not. And and what affects the sales is not only the products themselves, but also the way the vendor is acting. So suppose we have a vendor that is delaying samples and delaying with shipments and short shipping and stuff like that. That's going to cause eventually to, negative growth of the sales for the retailer. And the buyer will look at this thinking, okay, this seller is, they have great products, everything is good, but still, the way they fulfill everything, the way they act in the business and, spoil me, I would say, as a buyer, is not as good as the others. So I would rather, go with the others that are, like a Swiss clock, and then everything is on time, everything is accurate. If I need some extra inventory, they always have it for me ready, or even if they need to, quickly reproduce and ship it and everything. So I think they evaluate, the buyers are evaluating the vendors based on a lot of factors, but one of the biggest factors is how they deliver everything in terms of the buyer. So some vendors might, deliver everything and do it perfectly, and others would, get stuck in the process, starting to buzz the buyer saying, hey, what is this term? I don't know this term. But can I fill out this paper later on? Small questions and things that are, pain in the neck for the buyers. And then rather than them having some focus on sales and bringing more products, they have to deal with, all this painful points, I would call it. Okay. So yeah, this is definitely
Clear. And what are the buyers thinking? I mean, how they make decision in 2026, you think?
so I think price price is one thing that is going to be really focused on this year. And I'm not talking about having cheap prices or cheap products. I'm talking about price in general in terms of wholesale pricing. So you have the MSRP, which is the retail price, the price you're selling to the consumer, whether it's on Amazon, on shelf, it's the same price, and it should be aligned across all platforms. Otherwise, it's going to kill either one of them. But then the wholesale pricing it depends on the retailer. So if you're looking at companies like Nordstrom or Michaels or Goldman's, those companies usually trying to buy around 50% of the MSRP. So if your product is selling for $50, they would try to buy it for $25. And then the off-price retailers would try to buy it for like 35%. So you're going to end up with $15 to $17 on the same product. But, and it's a big but, it looks now like the wholesale pricing is going to go lower for a lot of buyers. And that's because they're, again, driven prices as for, being skeptical about what's going to happen with all the tariff and implementation of the tax again. But not only that, but also the market becomes more and more competitive as the time, moves on. You look at other platforms like TikTok and Instagram and others that are taking quite a nice bite from the cake, and they want to make sure that they are, delivering enough profit from themselves. Now, if until now, actually, companies like let's say Nordstrom would work on 45 to 55% of markup. Now they would want, so let me close my phone. Now they would want to work on a bigger markup because they have expenses that they didn't have last year's. So this is affecting, the business. And well, I think it's a major point that we're seeing.
Got it. Got it. Can you share with us the process of working with the retail empire to qualify your opportunities as well, right? And once they are screened and are ready to go in terms of your internal processes, what's exactly happening, in your process inside your company?
Yeah, 100%. So the first thing we're looking at is the brand. If we think there's a potential, now we're trying, to be skeptical about what we think because not always we're going to be right about it. But eventually, products that are unique or wide enough in terms of having enough SKUs, like 15, 20 at least, and other factors we take into consideration. And once we approve them and think they are good for retail, that's where the brand is, welcome to join our program, which is monthly basis type of program. As long as you're happy, you stay in the program. If you're not, you can drop and leave at any point. And that's because we believe that we need to deliver the actual thing. And the actual thing is purchase orders. Eventually, everybody wants to grow their sales. If you don't grow your sales, it's not good for you to be with us, and it's not good for us to have you with us. Also, that's something that we keep in mind all the time. And then the process is basically approaching buyers at a certain amount every month. So the first month is going to be usually around 50, 60 different retailers that we're going to approach with your brand. We know how to build the texts and the briefs and the description around your brand. We are leaning on a lot of information from the vendor, but eventually we know exactly what the buyers wants to hear, and more than that, what they don't want to hear. By the way, they don't want to hear about your Amazon activity. They're going to check it themselves. If it's the elephant in the room, they don't want to hear it from you. They're going to check it anyway. And then we start serving them. So if you're looking at, for instance, 50 retailers a month, you're talking about probably a couple of hundreds of buyers. And that's because even if you're selling very precise type of category, let's say you're selling hair care. Inside hair care, if you're talking about companies like Costco and Walmart, Sam Club, you're going to find that there are tens, sometimes even hundreds of buyers at the same section. Now, not even if you know most of them and they know us, not necessarily we are in touch with the exact right person for this brand that we're talking about. So then sometimes they would move us to another buyer, and the other one would say, oh, this is not me, it's Jones, it's Linda, and so on, until we get to the right person and start moving forward if they're interested. But then again, the frame is, between 50 to 70 retailers a month, and majority of them is based on current connections that we have with them, either from current business we have with them or previous. When I say previous, I mean the last couple of months, not more than that. Because a buyer you spoke with last year would never remember you unless you had a good dinner with them or something special, but usually they would not remember. That's why we maintain the relationship with them all the time. But that's the nutshell of what we do.
Yeah. And usually how the process works, the buyer will ask for some initial samples, some quantities, or what's the process in terms of just onboarding?
Yeah, there's a couple of different scenarios. Buyers could say, no, thanks, that's not for me. Or they could say, this looks interesting, can you get me samples? And they ask for samples. By the way, I think samples is one topic I'm going to talk about in one webinar I was hosted, because people don't get it. Samples is the most important part of the business. As more samples you send, as better chances to get more orders. It's as simple as that. Like, samples brings orders, period. And then samples is one thing they ask. Sometimes they ask for pricing, they ask for further information. Sometimes they ask for a Zoom call. Right now we're heading into a couple of TV segments, and most of them for some reason are asking for Zoom calls. They want to talk with you. They want to see who you are. They want to, really go into details before they make any step with you. And it's good to have those calls and not even to present your brand, because you should be confident about it, I believe, most of us, but more for pulling information about them and how they operate, what type of pricing they expect, what type of packaging they expect, if at all. For TV segments, which I just mentioned, by the way, they don't care about the retail packaging because it's like an e-commerce type of business. They sell, it's a dropship. It's a dropship of usually a couple of thousands within the first 2-3 hours of the segments, but then it's still dropship. You don't really sell, and big container or something, but one by one. Different type of business and fulfillment. But anyway, these are the questions they ask. Sometimes they might, plant a quick question asking you for something professional and wanting to see how you react to that to know if you're a vendor that knows the business. For instance, one of the questions we always hear is about EDI. Are you EDI certified? Now, I'm not going to talk about EDI, but in very, very short, EDI is a CRM system connecting between vendors and and buyers. So, yeah.
Yeah, so these are like technical implementation. Now those samples are actually going to the shelves for trying this.
But no, those analysts, yeah, internally they meant for the buyers in their office to look at the samples, to see the product, to test it if they want, and then they have discussions. Do we want to bring this in, and if we bring it, by what volume and everything? But samples is the leading factor to get actual orders in hand for retail.
Because previously, when you said samples are sales, you meant in the process of just winning that specific retailer, right? And in
That could yes, exactly.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. And although we know there are a lot of retailers out there, obviously there are the big ones, right, that you obviously mentioned, but there is a big long tail of probably 30,000 retailers or so. How do you suggest for a brand to approach this? So are you starting with those big 30, 40 big names, or?
So I think, yeah, I think it depends. It depends on where the seller is. But if you are in advanced level where you're selling 7-8 figures or above, then you should go to the big ones, because eventually the process is more or less the same between a 1 to 3 stores type of company and 5,000 stores company. People are calling me all the time. I have to shut this down. So that's what we're seeing, and I think if you are in the earlier stages, you would rather want to go to the boutique or to the standalone stores. We call them specialty stores. Some people in the industry call them moms and pop stores, because I read that they have a store together. So moms and pop stores, which means that the quantities are going to be smaller. The orders are going to be somewhere between $1,000 to $5,000 at the maximum a month. But at almost the same efforts and process, if you go to a company like Walmart or Costco, Target, and so on, you would see far, far bigger numbers, with a couple of zeros on the right side. So
Yeah.
it really depends where the seller is. But I generally would say, even if you're small, get some confidence and try to hit the big ones.
Got it. And when you hit the big ones, or let's say the process with sampling and the buyers went well, and there is initial shipment being shipped, what's the step? I mean, how do you usually recommend brands to handle this step in terms of trainings and all the other important?
I think the first step that you would expect is the setup. And if it doesn't come to the setup, then you would bring it up. That would be a very good point to do as a vendor saying, can you please advise how's the setup process on your side, if you want to share it with us files and everything? Because the setup, well, if you look at companies, small ones with 100, 200 stores like Ocean State, Joblot, Menards, Gaves, all these companies, the setup file is something that you could fill within 2 minutes. It's just your name, ID, and so on, address, shipping address, and everything. But if you're looking at bigger companies like Costco and CVS and others, Walmart, of course, the process is heavier. There's going to be much more files. You're going to have to know what you're doing. And if you don't, you can just start and learn it. It's not something crazy to learn, but it's something that you definitely need to know. And by the way, this is something that in our service, which we spoke about earlier, we provided as part of the service. We help, vendors with the setup and everything, just assuming that it's easier for them and faster if they, use us to fill out all these forms. And then once the forms are in, the next step is the PO. Now, a PO, purchase order, will always look different across different retailers. The only thing that you need to know here is how to translate the PO, which means to take the important things. What do I need to take care of in terms of the shipping? What I need to notice during the process? Do I need to send an ASN, acknowledged ship notice? Do I need an invoice before or after the goods are sent? Packing, stuff like that. And of course, delivery date and pricing, most important.
Sure. Anything else that is important for brands to understand when going retail in terms of marketing, messaging, the packaging itself, something on the operational side of things?
Well, a few points about packaging. Just think about a buyer, a consumer standing in the store looking at your product. They need to understand from the packaging what the product is. That's number one. Number two, in terms of pricing, you need to keep in mind that most of them are paying net plus, which means they're going to get the goods and pay you after 20, 30, 40 days, whatever it is, sometimes 60 days, sometimes even 15 days. It depends. Um, and then when it comes to marketing, most of them are not requiring marketing, but some, like Best Buy, for instance, and a few others, they do have a factor called marketing allowance. I don't like this the way they term it, but anyway, it is what it is, and they call it marketing allowance, but actually what they mean is what percentage out of the order are you going to use for social media to push the product. So you're actually going to push offline products from your online channels. Oh, what it is. It's not a must, but yeah, definitely a point to keep in mind.
Yes, yes. And in terms of just preparing for this peak or spikes in inventory requirements or demand.
So in inventory, I wouldn't be worried besides having samples up and ready. As I mentioned earlier, samples are the most important. And if you deliver them fast, quick, efficient, clean, and sealed nice, that's the best thing to do. But then if you don't have enough inventory, first of all, let's say that you have 1,000 pieces per SKU by 20 SKUs. You're not going to tell them when they ask you about the inventory level, you're not going to share the entire quantity because you have to keep some inventory for your Amazon, Shopify, whatever, right? But then there are two types of orders. One of them is test order. So if they're gonna be relied on the products that you actually have in the US landed, and they're gonna say, okay, you have 800 pieces from the 1,000 that you really have. Let's say you had 800. We're gonna pull 400. We want to send you an order for 400 per whatever 15 SKUs. Okay, then you're all good. It's gonna be immediate deliver. Everyone is happy. But then another option is to say, okay, we need about 3,500 units per SKU. So please advise delivery date. And that's because they know that you need to go back to the manufacturer and, supply chain, make sure that, for instance, if you're producing in China, like I was doing for a couple of years, then it's going to take 30 days, 60 days, sometimes even 90 days, but they're going to give you that time because they know exactly how it works in terms of, vendors and manufacturing. Yeah.
So usually tell how long this, let's say, sales cycles takes, from just initial introduction and your work that you do until sampling stage and then
Actually, the fastest we've seen of getting an order was between 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. It's very fast. Typically, it's going to be a process of somewhere between a month and a half up to 2 months. But with some companies like Costco, for instance, the minimum you're going to get into the process until you get a PO is going to be 1 year. Not specifically, a couple of specific company, especially with Costco, they move very slow and they have a reason for doing so. It's another topic.
yeah, interesting. In terms of internal technology system or other supporting system from the brand side to support that process.
Well, you can use an EDI. There are a lot of different companies in the market, but you can also use a company like GoFlow, which I think you also know, Augmented CO, right? What GoFlow is doing is acting as an EDI provider, and they know by the information you provide them how to pull the inventory from the right place. So suppose you have inventory on Walmart warehouses or Amazon or your 3PL or in China, wherever it is, they know where to pull it from to make sure that they play properly with your inventory upon your request and everything. And they also know how to transmit those orders to, well, as of today, they work with 250 chain stores in the US. People are like retailers. By the way, we work with almost 500, I think, by now. So, yeah.
Yeah, 500 is a very impressive number. And obviously you have been working throughout those years in many niches and categories, right? Anything interesting that you foresee or you see trending for the next few years?
Yeah, I think trends is something that you have to keep your eyes on all the time. I was just on another last week, I think it was. Yeah, I was on a conference with, I don't know, 30 or 40 sellers, very, very advanced ones. And one of the managers from TikTok went on stage, and they were talking about trends. And one of the trends was a stupid doll, which I don't even remember the name, but it was selling, like, it was the top seller in last Black Friday. So I think, you know if you are connected to trends, it's always good, because even if you sell, for instance, just flash toys or something, and you take from the new trend the right characters or the right, environment, colors and everything, then definitely it's going to impact what you can come up with, like in terms of the new line, the new products and new SKUs. And you do have a situation right now that you have to come up with new SKUs all the time. You cannot just, keep on selling the same stuff, because eventually it's going to die at some point, right? We have to be innovative, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. There is any exclusivity terms usually in the contract, or it's not?
By working with us,
No, by working with the retailer, one retailer would say, okay, to work with you, but you not work with this, this, and this, and this.
no, I mean, no, they don't typically talk about any exclusivity. The only situation where you do see something like that is with companies, again, Costco. What Costco is doing, they take a product. Let's say you're selling the product for $29.99, okay? And they want to sell it for $19.99, but hey, if they sell it for $19.99, they're going to kill your business, right? Because everybody's going to see it on their platform for lower. So to be able to do so and not kill your business, what they do is asking you to change one or two of the attributes of the product. So suppose you're selling like a flashlight, and this is actually not just an example I'm throwing from there. It's a real case that happened. They want to have a different location for the button of the flashlight, and not only the color and everything, like really changing attributes. So then it's a complete whole new SKU. Now it's the same SKU, everything is the same cost, same manufacturing, same everything. But changing that little thing, little attribute, made it a new SKU because it's not the same. And then they can position it at $19.99 in their stores, not worrying that they're going to kill your business. And by the way, because of their pricing structure, which is very different from others, you're going to gain still between $16 to $17, which is even better than what you would get in terms of half price of the $29.99 from the beginning, right? So, but usually, in short, no, they don't ask for exclusivity.
Got it. All right. So, well, you ship inventory, it is there, and, time passes and the inventory is not, pushed out correctly. Obviously, various retailers have various forecasting skill sets or capabilities, right? Some of them are much better than forecasting. Some of them are not that good, obviously. What's going to happen with that inventory, as time goes by?
So first and most, you have to understand that there is no term like consignment in retail. Barely exists. It exists only with a very few companies, not really chain stores, but other type of channels. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But then you do want your products to sell. And for that reason, they sometimes ask you for the MAP. MAP refers to minimum advertising price. That means that, let's say Christmas is over, we bought from you 20,000 products, 20,000 units, and we sold 9,000. Just for example, worst case scenario, 11,000 products were left on stores and they were supposed to be sold for $29.99. Now the MAP says that if that happens, they can sell it for $15, $12, whatever, just to get rid of it and not to be, left with the damage. But they call it MAP because it's minimum advertising policy. And it's a policy because they have to tell you when it happens so that they don't kill your listing or on Amazon or whatever.
Other channels, obviously. Yeah. So they share information, they consult with you, and they actually notify you. Just
Exactly. But it's based on your policy from the first place.
Got it. So think about like 3 words that are most important to you, and please share it with us and why you chose these words.
3 words. I would say honesty, transparency, and loyalty. I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but honesty is because, listen, look, I've been to business quite a few years now, and I've seen a lot of things happening, not necessarily good ones, with a lot of people doing, some stuff. And I realized very quickly that if you're running a business, you better do it both honesty and transparent, because if you don't, then your customers are not going to be happy. If one customer is not happy, you are not going to be happy, and other customers won't even join you because they heard about that experience. That's for the first 2 terms. As for the last term, loyalty, I mean, it sounds a little bit unfortunate, but eventually loyalty brings you to a situation where you can run with people for a very long term, because both of you know that, whatever happens, you have loyalty to each other. If it's for good, for bad, you share with each other what's happening, back to the transparency, but then you're loyal. So
Yes. Great. I love these words, and thank you very much for sharing. So how, brands and founders out there can find you, Hello?
Well, they can go to retail-empire.com, our website, or they can try me on LinkedIn, or offer TALOR offer. Both on, we have Retail Empire both on Facebook and Instagram, as well as a YouTube channel where you can find a lot of information. Our YouTube channel again is Retail Empire. Yeah, it's Retail Empire, not under my name. And there's a lot of free information there if you want to give it a try, and available on all these platforms. You can touch base with us, and definitely be in touch with any brand that you want to share, that you want to offer to retailers. We're happy to look at it. Yeah.
Amazing. Anything else you want to add, Hello?
Yeah, I thank you for having me today.
Okay, wonderful. It was really, really interesting, and thank you so much for this valuable information. Have a great day.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.